I was stranded on the Mexico-Guatemala border, I was presented with a choice. Cross the river illegally on a raft, or await the decision of the Mexican immigration system with bated breath. Hey, it's Sarah. I lived in Mexico for 10 years and I'm your guide to authentic experience right here in Mexico City. Make sure you grab my Explore Mexico City cheat sheet down below. As I've been scouring forums and Facebook groups of expats wanting to visit or live in Mexico City, I've come across an alarming trend. People are asking this question:
can I just overstay my Mexican tourist visa?
And that, I'm going to give you the answer right off the bat. That is a resounding no. Maybe it's because a lot of people from the United States don't get to travel outside of the country very often, but I'm going to give you a little insight today about reasons why you should never overstay your Mexican tourist visa, and that time that I did overstay and I was stranded on the Mexico-Guatemala border. Stay tuned for that because it's an interesting story. So if you are not used to traveling outside of the United States, you're not used to dealing with immigration, let me just put things into perspective for you. Immigration is not a joke. And just because you're American doesn't mean you're above the rules. I have dealt with many immigration officials, not just in Mexico. I've dealt with immigration officials in many different countries. And let me tell you, some of the rudest, most inflexible, difficult people that I have met in my life have been immigration officials. Not all of them have been like that. I've met some nice ones, but it's really just the luck of the draw. Immigration officials do not care what your story is. They do not care what your circumstances are. They do not care if you don't understand what they're saying. They do not care. Now, once again, I have to be fair. I have met some nice immigration officials that have cared, and they were courteous and human. But I have met several that have been just like stone walls, just like complete robots. They cannot reason. They have no compassion in their heart. You must be prepared to face this when you visit Mexico. Remember, when you're visiting Mexico or any foreign country for that matter, you don't have the right to be in that country if you're just a tourist. I feel like as Americans, the culture in the United States a lot is focused on my rights, my rights, my rights. When you're visiting another country, you don't have those rights. I mean, you have some rights, of course, but you are absolutely a guest who has the privilege of visiting Mexico depending on the mood of the person looking at you as you're passing through customs and immigration there at the airport. Most of the time, it's business as usual. Stamp your passport. You get 180 days currently, moving on with your life. It's not always like that, though. You can't assume when you come to Mexico to visit that you're just automatically going to get 180 days of free stay in Mexico. I have a friend who was accustomed to entering and exiting Mexico every 6 months to kind of renew her 180 days. And one time she came and surprise, they gave her 90 days. This can happen. We cannot just assume we get 180 free days. Also, whenever you come into Mexico, you should really already have your exit strategy. One time, as I was boarding a plane to come back into Mexico, because I actually lived in Mexico, but I was on that 180-day tourist visa, doing like border runs every 6 months. Very expensive and complicated, by the way. As I was boarding the plane, I didn't have a ticket to leave Mexico, and I was kind of poor at the time, so I hadn't bought one, and they wouldn't allow me aboard. They wouldn't allow me to board the plane to return to Mexico unless I had a ticket out. This might depend on the airline, the policies, things change constantly, but please be aware that you may not even be allowed to enter Mexico without proof of departure from Mexico. And really, if you just have a tourist visa, you should plan for that in advance anyway. As I was recently reading through those Facebook groups, I came across a gentleman who said that
he didn't really want to leave Mexico because he just felt like staying a little bit longer. Could he just overstay his tourist visa because leaving the country would cost a bit?
It could cost you a whole lot more than a bit. if you choose to abuse your tourist visa and overstay. Once again, this is completely up to the mood of the particular immigration official that you get on that Tuesday morning when you're trying to leave Mexico. You do not want to be at the mercy of the mood of an immigration official, let me tell you. So, what happened to me as I was at my great dilemma standing in front of the Suchiate River there at the Mexican-Guatemalan border? I was doing my usual border run, which I used to do every 6 months. I don't need to do that anymore, now I'm a resident. And I had accidentally overstayed my visa by 1 measly day. I overstayed by 1 day, and the immigration official would not let me exit Mexico. He told me that he had to clear everything with Mexico City, which was hours and hours and hours away, by the way, before he would allow me to leave. So I was literally stranded on the Mexican-Guatemalan border. I had to find accommodation with strangers and just wait to see what would happen. I wasn't sure if I was going to be put in prison. I wasn't sure if I was going to be fined. I wasn't sure if I was going to be deported. I had no idea what was going to happen. Now, those strangers turned out to become lifelong friends of mine, and they were great people, but that's not a situation that you ever want to be in. It turned out the next day that I was to go to the immigration office again, there on the border, and it was quite a while of waiting around before I was called back with a very serious immigration agent, and he gave me a very long printout in all caps. It was very difficult to understand, of course, all in Spanish, detailing who I was, my activity in the country. I mean, it was scarily detailed. I'm not really sure how the Mexican government got a hold of this information. But anyway, they knew a lot about me. They absolutely had the right to fine me in that moment, but they chose not to. Thankfully, I don't think the fine would have been very big because it had only been 1 day that I had overstayed my visa, but boy was it the most stressful moment of my life. There's no stress like wondering if you're going to be imprisoned or stuck in Guatemala for the rest of your life. They also had the right to deny me entry into Mexico because I had abused my tourist visa previously. That did not happen, and I'm very happy to report that I got back into Mexico with no problems, but it was truly one of the most stressful episodes of my life. Please do not overstay your tourist visa when you come to Mexico. Do not lose the paperwork that they give you. Take the timing seriously, have your exit strategy, and come to Mexico respecting that you have the privilege of visiting Mexico. You are not really supposed to come and live here on a tourist visa, although I did that for like 7 years, so, you know, I understand the appeal. And please take all this to heart so that you can avoid a lot of heartache and headache in the future. If you want to know more about how to legally support yourself while in Mexico as a tourist, check out this video next. Oh, and please subscribe.